In our gospel reading just now, we heard the line, "Give therefore the emperor the things that are the emperor's, and to God the things that are God's." This verse, at least this first part about giving to the emperor, or in some translations you may be more familiar with Caesar, they mean the same thing. This first part in particular has been used as justification by many for the idea of the separation of church and state. And I don't just mean what we all benefit from, what we all love, that we can, in fact, in this country, worship and practice our faith in the ways that we want to, that we don't have any mandates telling us that we can't do these things. But what I mean instead is this idea of separating out our lives so that we have these two containers. One container for everything that has to do with the church, our faith, and everything else that has to do with the state, our lives as citizens, our politics, all those other things. And I have to confess, this dual approach, this separating out these corners of our lives, is very much how I lived my life for a very long time. My faith has always been something that's important to me, and I've always tried to live guided by that. But there was most certainly a time for me that I had that little box, that part of my life. And then I had politics, the things of the state, in another. And while I tried to do good through both of those, they didn't really influence each other. They didn't really have any connection with each other. But then things started to change. I eventually would go on to serve City Year as an AmeriCorps member, as a group that is very much a part of the state. And so while we weren't prevented from practicing our faith, it certainly wasn't a huge part of our daily life and work. What we were doing with City Year was good. We were helping a lot of students, a lot of people. But at the same time, it was a lot of hard work. And I found very much as the year went on that I needed something behind me. I needed power and energy. And what I really found is I needed that from my faith. I think of the words that a woman spoke to Dr. Martin Luther King, that my feet are tired, but my soul is at rest. I very much longed to have that feeling and knew that my faith was the only thing that could provide it. But because I was in a non-faith-based nonprofit organization, I struggled. And because I had already compartmentalized these parts of my life, I struggled even more to gain that energy I needed from my faith. The year following, I moved out to Montana, where my entire life was centered around my faith, and really my work in the church out there. And once I had that experience, I saw that everything in my life started to flourish. And so it made me stop and think a little bit more about these two compartments of my life. And what I realized is what I was doing was wrong. What I really needed to be doing is making sure that that box of my faith, the church, that God was at the front and center, influencing everything in my life. And that included my life in the state, my life as a citizen. my political life and views. This understanding stems from a more holistic look at the verse that we have today in our gospel. Because when we look closely at this text, there's not just that first part. There's two parts to it. Jesus tells us not only to give to the emperor the things that are the emperor's, Jesus also tells us to give to God the things that are God's. So yes, you should be paying your taxes. That is definitely very much something we should all be doing. And I also would think that for us in our society, giving to the emperor, or rather giving to the state, means a little bit more. It means being civically engaged, civically minded, and civically involved. But what we also have to do is give to God the things that are God's. What we owe God is a lot more than just taxes. What we owe God is so much more. Because really, we owe God everything. We owe our time, our talent, our treasure. And yes, that treasure does mean money. So start thinking about stewardship in that line. But giving everything to God really means giving our entire lives. Everything about us. That means that even when we are giving what we owe to the state, giving to the emperor, giving to Caesar the things that are Caesar's, in doing those things, we also have to serve God first and foremost. We have to serve God first and foremost, always. Now, of course, I'm not going to tell you what political positions you should be taking or who you should be voting for. But I will tell you this, and it's very important, and it took me a long time to figure this out. So listen when I tell you this. I will tell you that whatever your political positions are, and whoever it is that you vote for, you should let your faith guide you. You should let your faith guide you in all of those things. We are not called to separate our religious and our political life. And I can tell you from experience, as the saying goes, in that way lies madness. Instead, we're called to let God guide us in all things. That means giving to God all the things that are God's, because ultimately all things are things that belong and should be given to God. Our allegiance to God, our allegiance to the Lord, is more important than anything else in our lives. So let that guide you. Let your love and service to God guide you and lead you in everything else that you do.